June 22nd MAG Regional Council meeting. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking so that those joining us virtually can hear you. For those participating via Zoom, please remember to unmute your device before speaking and mute when you're not speaking to create a positive experience for all attendees. When speaking, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. Phone participants should use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise their hands. The MAG public comment process provides opportunities for members of the public to comment on items scheduled on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. 3 opportunities are going to be provided for comment, including call to the audience and the consent agenda and action items to be heard. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website prior to the meeting, as long as the comments are received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table in the hallway. Please be sure to indicate the item for which you want to speak and to give it to a designated MAG staff member. If you are parked in the garage, please remember to validate your ticket. Parking validators are available. Parking validators are, there might be some violators as well. Please raise your hand if you're a violator. Thank you for self-identifying. Parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. For those who purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Please note that hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We'll now begin the meeting with a roll call of members. Andrea?
Thank you, Chair Giles and members of the Regional Council. I will go down the list of members alphabetically. Please unmute if you are virtual and indicate if you are present. Mayor Barney. Mayor Bien Wilner. President Burnett. Mayor Carlotte. Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Hall.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke. President Javier.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo.
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman. Mayor LaVault.
Yes, good morning. I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira. Mayor Les Peterson.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson. Mayor Pizzillo.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Price.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Riggs. Mayor Rodriguez.
Present.
Thank you. Governor Roe Lewis. Mayor Schoaf.
Present.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Walter. Mayor Wires.
I'm here.
Mayor Weiss. Mayor Wilson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods. And the chair is present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda is the call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. Andrea, do we have any requests to speak from the public?
We do not have any public comments or requests to speak for this item or any item on the agenda.
All right, thank you. Does any member of the public present today wish to make a comment? All right. Hearing so, we will move on to our next item, which is our executive director's report. Director Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council. We can go to the next slide. So on June 6th, we held a press conference on Secure Your Load Day. This was a proclamation actually by the governor of Arizona. So Mayor Weiss represented MAG at this press conference. And just to note that in 2020, we had 800 debris-related crashes and 7 deaths. And so once again, we need to continue to reinforce this message that we need to secure your loads. These are very dangerous. If you see anything on the roadway, like a sofa, ladder, things like that, dial 911. It is an emergency. So make sure you do that. Next slide, please. Last week, under the leadership of Mayor Hermosillo and Supervisor Sellers, we held an economic mission to Hermosillo, Sonora. Very well received. Got great feedback from GPEC, who also participated in this event too. Elsa Beljean and Kelly Williams of our staff, who were the cat herders, if you will, in Hermosillo. So once again, great program and great response from our friends in Sonora. Go to the next slide. Yesterday, we hosted in this room the Mandela Washington Fellowship. This is a fellowship program sponsored by the State Department and hosted locally by Arizona State University. We had 27 participants in representing 21 countries in Africa. The participants ranged from transportation, engineering, human services, policy, you name it. So it was very, very good discussion. We spent 3 hours talking about what MAG does and some of the issues that we deal with here and how we deal with this, and obviously emphasize the importance of our regional discussions that we have in regional problem solving, which is the core of what MAG does. Go to the next slide. And finally, we released our 2022 annual report. There you see Mayor Giles, who's this will be his last meeting serving as chair, and Mayor Weiss, who's our incoming chair. So you'll see there, you can, our theme this year is coming back stronger, which seems to be appropriate given the last couple of years of the pandemic. So, Mr. Chair, that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Please feel free to contact Eric if you have any questions concerning the report or other issues related to MAG. Next item on our agenda is item 5, approval of the consent agenda. Items 5A through 5P are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the committee have questions or request a presentation on any of these items? Any of the folks that are participating virtually have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All right, hearing none. Prior to the approval of the consent agenda, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment items on the consent? Andrea, have we received any requests to speak from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've not received any public comments.
All right, thank you. If does any member of the committee have questions or requests of items? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve items 5A through 5P?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion to approve items 5A through 5C.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mayor Osborne. We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? If not, can I have a voice vote from those in the room? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Andrea, would you please take a roll call of the members participating virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I will go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Ms. Daniels.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, you are here. Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. President Javier.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed?
Yes, Mayor Walter, Florence, Arizona.
Thank you. And we have the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is number 6. This is a resolution to join House America. There will be a presentation from MAG Human Services Planner Katie Gentry, and this item is for approval. There is also an opportunity for the public to comment on this item. Staff, have we received any written comments for this item? Andre, do we have any requests to speak on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have any comments on this item or any other item on the agenda today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Katie, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for this opportunity to provide an overview of House America and its connection to Pathways Home. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of House America. Next slide. The House America is a partnership between the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, or USICH. They have a national goal of rehousing 100,000 households through a housing first approach through rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, as well as adding 20,000 units to the development pipeline. Those are affordable housing development units. Next slide, please. How do they hope to accomplish this? Through American Rescue Plan dollars that are unprecedented than ever before, as well as other CARES dollars that we have. And House America hopes to do this between October 1 of 2021 and December 31, 2022. So already about halfway through it, we've already started working on these goals. So far, 87 leaders have joined on the national level, including the city of Mesa and the city of Phoenix. And so we are proposing to join as a council of governments. Next slide, please. So you may be asking, how does this connect to Pathways Home and the work that you all are already doing to address homelessness? Next slide. So we are already taking a regional approach to address homelessness. This has been an effort since you all passed Pathways Home back in December of 2021. In that plan, we identified that we needed to add 1,225 units of permanent housing in order to reduce homelessness by 25%. And we needed to increase coordination among levels of government. Next slide, please. So in alignment with that, we are hoping to identify our goals with House America as those same goals of rehousing 1,225 households through a housing first approach. So that alignment is we are putting 1,225 households that are currently experiencing homelessness into either a rapid rehousing or a permanent supportive housing unit. And then in addition, we're adding 300 units to the development pipeline. We believe that both of these are achievable goals, but are stretching us and pushing us in this goal. We are already starting to see the ambitious achievements coming to fruition. We have started housing these households from October to now, and then some developments have already entered the pipeline. And we continue to believe that with home ARP money as well as ARPA money, that we will continue to put investments into the development pipeline. Next slide, please. So next steps, what does this mean for you? We are asking that you approve of this resolution to join House America with our goals of rehousing 1,225 households and adding 300 units of housing to the development pipeline. We really want to acknowledge on a national level all of the work that we are doing locally, and want to say that we are, if you all accept this resolution, this is the first council of governments across the nation that is joining House America. So cities and counties have joined, but not across a region as a regional council. Next slide, please. I'm happy to answer any other questions or any things that you all have regarding this presentation or about the resolution.
Thank you, Katie. Any questions for Katie on this topic? Katie, I know the last time we talked about homelessness, we as a body decided for staff to perhaps come back to us with some more ambitious goals, because frankly, we'd already achieved the goals, early on in the year. So these are the goals that you're proposing for our participation in Housing America are those same goals, are they not?
They are those same goals. When we initially came to you with our goals, and we will be coming back to you in August with goals, Pathways Home is over 5 years versus this is within 1 year.
Mhm.
So we do think those 1,225, because we've already exceeded those goals that included both added units and committed units. Some of those folks have yet to move into units, which is why we think this is still achievable to house 1,225 in this year alone.
Great. And I think the more important part is that we're joining this organization, and we're going to be participating at a national level, and we can always tweak our goals if we decide to do that in other ways, right? Okay, any additional questions or comments on this before we vote? Is there a motion for approval of the resolution to join House America?
Move approval.
Thank you, Mayor Gallego.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Dickey. We have a motion and a second. Let's have a voice vote for those in the room. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Thank you. Andrea, will you please do a roll call of the members participating virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I will go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. President Javier.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo.
Aye. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Mayor Laval.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Walter.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda, number 7, is a presentation from MAG Transportation Policy and Planning Director Tim Strow. This item is to recommend acceptance of the SR 347 Peters and Knoll Road to the I-10/Maricopa Corridor Improvement Plan. There's an opportunity for the public to comment on this item. Andre, have we received any? I'm going to have you tell me this one more time. Have we received any written or request to speak from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have not received any written requests from the public.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, Tim. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. Public involvement process, and it will wrap up with recommendations and implementation plan. Next slide, please. So this study started off in 2019. It was funded by MAG, City of Maricopa, and Pinal County. The goal of the study was to build stakeholder consensus around a corridor improvement plan that we can move forward for future study, like what is currently being conducted along the I-10 Wild Horse Pass DCR. The study also included a planning and environmental linkages process, or PEL. The PEL's process is intended to lay the groundwork for a more detailed NEPA process in future studies. A stakeholder group was formed to help lead this study and help guide it. That stakeholder group consisted of the Gila River Indian Community, Ak-Chin Indian Community, City of Maricopa, Maricopa Pinal County, FHWA, ADOT, and MAG. Next slide, please. So State Route 347 is the most direct option for people traveling between the City of Maricopa and surrounding Pinal County to the Phoenix metro area, and provides access to the Wild Horse Pass development area. The study area for this project was about 20 miles long. It started up north at the I-10 State Route 347 traffic interchange and ended at Peters and Knoll Road down by the Ak-Chin Indian Community. We broke this study area into 3 different segments. We have the segment across the Gila River Indian Community, segment the City of Maricopa, and then we have the Ak-Chin Indian Community to the south. The State Route 347 on the north across the Gila River Indian Community consists of 2 lanes in each direction divided by a dirt median. The speed limit on this road is about 55 miles an hour, and we have a few different signalized intersections along the corridor, which creates bottlenecks during the AM and PM peak hour. This corridor experiences heavy traffic in the mornings and evenings, people going to the Phoenix metro area for work and coming home in the evening. So in addition to looking at the segment along State Route 347, we also evaluated the I-10 347 traffic interchange, Riggs Road, Cement Plant Access Road, and Casablanca Road. Now, as 347 transitions to the city of Maricopa, the roadway widens from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. So for this study, the city of Maricopa was looking at different opportunities to improve travel time for their residents. As the 347 transitions out of the city of Maricopa to the Occitan Indian community, the roadway again narrows down to 2 lanes in each direction, divided by a median, divided by a dirt median. Next slide, please. So a stakeholder workshop was held early in the planning process where the vision, goals, and objectives were outlined for the study. The stakeholders recognized the need to accommodate forecasted growth, optimize travel time, and improve safety. The vision statement identified by stakeholders was to provide a reliable transportation corridor that supports economic development while minimizing environmental impacts. It was also recommended by the Gila River Indian community that the corridor improvement plan strategies maintain the current corridor easement to the greatest extent possible. Next slide, please. So having defined the corridor vision, goals, and objectives, reviewed opportunities and constraints, and recommendations from previous studies, stakeholders held a workshop that identified over 134 potential corridor and intersection improvement strategies. The universe of alternatives was then screened by the stakeholders at the workshop to narrow the list of those best met the corridor vision and goals and objectives. The resulting alternatives consisted of corridor strategies as well as spot improvements at key intersections. Next slide, please. The highest ranked strategies that came out of the analysis received the most support from the stakeholders was the traditional corridor widening to 6 lanes, the 6-lane Arizona Parkway concept with indirect left turns at signalized intersections, and widening to include reversible lanes. In addition to the corridor strategies, the stakeholder group recommended a grade separation at Riggs Road and adopting the diverging diamond interchange concept that was recommended as part of the I-10 Wild Horse Pass study. Based on the 2040 modeling results, the reversible lanes in Arizona Parkway concept improved travel time by approximately 20 minutes during the morning commute, with traditional widening only improving travel time by approximately 10 minutes. Next slide, please. So one of the things we wanted to do to reach out to the public, we wanted to illustrate what our recommendations were. This is an illustration of the traditional corridor widening in Arizona Parkway concept. We would add 1 lane in each direction in the median, and we would divide that by a concrete barrier to help prevent crossover accidents occurring. We'd also construct shoulders on both sides of the roads. The only variation in corridor design would be at the intersections where the left turn movements would be replaced by median U-turns. Next slide, please. This is an illustration of the Arizona Parkway concept, which eliminates the left turn movements at signalized intersections and provides a median past the intersection for U-turns. As a result, the Arizona Parkway concept improves overall efficiency at all movements of the intersection and total crashes by reducing the number of conflict points from 32 to 16. Next slide, please. So as I discussed earlier, this corridor experiences heavy congestion during the AM and PM peak hours. The stakeholders recognize the need to look at different alternatives. So the reversible lane concept was recommended. This would add 2 lanes in the median that would be open during the AM peak hour in the northbound direction. And then the PM peak hour, it'd be reversed to go in the southbound direction. This is similar to what is being recommended on the I-17 North in the future. At all the signalized intersections, the reversible lanes would be grade separated, while the outside lanes would still be at grade so residents could access the side roads. Next slide, please. So after we identified the highest ranked alternative strategies, we wanted to get the public's opinion on the highest ranked alternatives. 2 public meetings were held at the City of Maricopa and Occitan Indian community. In addition, an online survey was hosted on the study website for the duration of the study. The survey was also refined in 2020 based on input from the Gila River Indian community and publicized to the community in late 2020. A total of 272 responses were received. Next slide, please. So in general, The survey responses confirm that most of the travel occurs along State Route 347 is over a longer distance with origin and destinations in the Phoenix metro area. Respondents also believe that while optimizing travel time is most important, safety is also a priority. The survey also indicates that most respondents are supportive of alternative intersection treatments, such as the Arizona Parkway concept, reversible lanes. The survey also asked respondents what they thought the highest need was for the corridor. And one of the top recommendations was an overpass at Riggs Road and adding general purpose lanes north of the city of Maricopa. Next slide, please. So after we finished our detailed analysis and quarter with our stakeholder group and received public comment, the recommendation was to move forward with the 6-lane Arizona Parkway concept north of the city of Maricopa across the Gila River Indian community. Through the city of Maricopa, as we discussed before, it's mostly built out to 6 lanes today. So they would look for making spot improvements to incorporate the Arizona Parkway concept at select locations to improve the AM and PM commute times. And then south of the city of Maricopa, the Auction Indian community asked us to just leave, not to recommend a specific concept, but to leave the traditional widening on the table or the Arizona Parkway. They wanted to see how the corridor would develop in the future before making that recommendation. Next slide, please. So in addition, as I stated before, for the I-10 State Route 347 interchange, we are taking the recommendations from the I-10 Wild Horse Pass study that is currently being conducted right now. They identify the diverging diamond interchange. So we are taking that recommendation and pushing that forward as well. And that is consistent, like I said, with the ADOT I-10 Wild Horse Pass study, DCR concept report. We also are moving forward. The stakeholders recommended a grade separation at Riggs Road. And then we are going to look at the Arizona Parkway concept, high T intersection at Cement Plant and Casablanca Road. Next slide, please. So the good news is there's a lot of positive momentum occurring along this corridor today. We do have some funding identified. There are some additional studies that are starting to kick off. At the top of the screen, the green circle, we do have funding programmed in the current Prop 400 program for the State Route 347 I-10 traffic interchange improvements for the DDI concept. The light green segment from I-10 to Riggs Road, we have funding identified in the Prop 400 extension strategic investment plan for improvements to that section of 347. Riggs Road received a state appropriation last year in the amount of $35 million to get that project started. That recently kicked off, is under design right now, an additional environmental. And then the section, the purple section from Riggs Road down to the city of Maricopa, PRTA identified this project in the regional transportation plan. They identified $28 million for improvements along this corridor. As you know, that tax was invalidated by the Arizona Supreme Court. So once they go back to the voters and are successful, monies will again be programmed for improvements along this section of 347. Next slide, please. So some of the next steps, we need to sign the PEL. FHWA and ADOT have already shown their support for this study and have signed the PEL. At the conclusion of the MAG approval process, Mr. Anderson will sign this statement. Like I said, this is a high-level vision for the corridor to move forward with stakeholder support. So we still have a lot of work to do. We do have some projects in the works, which is positive news. So there's a lot more to come, but Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. As a reminder, this is on for recommended action.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tim on this item? Yes.
Mayor Wires is sharing his mic with me today. Thank you. This is technical in nature, and I apologize. And you guys can refer me to an engineer if you so choose. But two questions really on it. Is there an anticipation that if this is created as a parkway, that there would be a shift at some point in the future to make this a full-blown, what we would consider to be a freeway in Arizona?
Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council, Ms. Daniels. So right now, the direction we received from the Gila River Indian community, the focus on an Arizona Parkway concept. Their recommendation that we remove the reversible lane concept, which kind of resembles a future freeway facility. So I think based on evaluating, working with the GRIC and different stakeholders along the corridor, we need to evaluate how this corridor develops in the future, which will really determine what type of recommendation, how this advances for possible opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And then just from a safety standpoint, when you show your roadway segment, you have a 10-foot center lane median on either side of the barricade, and then you have a 10-foot shoulder that you're showing. I was reading I'm nerdy like this, and I love reading studies across things being done across the country. And there is an effort to increase the center a roadway width for safety purposes. And because most people, when they're pulling off to the shoulder, that they have some landscaping or rocks or something else they can pull farther into. And so they're shifting that away in order to create a safer situation, particularly for law enforcement who find themselves often in that scary space. So just sort of putting it out there, and I'm happy to forward the study if that's helpful as well.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Mayor Gagel.
Thank you. Very excited to support this and to see it moving forward. I find myself often have opportunities to explain in the midst of Infrastructure and Jobs Act why county ballot initiatives are still important. So just to help make that argument, could you provided a little bit of detail about what is waiting for the election, but I don't know, it could be either you or Mayor Price, but if you could just help us articulate why that election still matters.
Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council, are you talking about the Prop 400 extension?
The Pinal one. So you had mentioned that some of the improvements were waiting for an election, and I just think it would be help us as we all discuss why county support for transportation funds to have an example.
Absolutely. I'll take it if that's okay. So this is Mayor Price. Absolutely. You know, it's been interesting because I've served a long time with Jack Sellers, county supervisor. He was the ADOT director, or excuse me, chairman of the transportation board for a while. And he once expressed a concern that, you know, if the state doesn't have a more unified plan, that these kind of one-off proposals by the counties would have to dictate. But the reality is that, you know, with the voter protection, there's a lot of oomph behind that. And I think we've certainly seen the success here in Maricopa County over the years by doing so. And so while the state doesn't have a formalized universal plan for the entire state, these are absolutely critical. And so in answer to your direct question, the Supreme Court did invalidate the 2017 tax that was put in place by the voters. Unfortunately, you know, I agree with the dissent, which doesn't put me on the winning side, but the dissent says that, you know, a separate tax where one tax is still zero is zero, because what's anything times zero is still zero. So it's not really a separate tax, but that's not the way that the majority saw it. And so they invalidated it. But the PRTA and the Board of Supervisors in Pinal County is sending it back to the voters this November. We anticipate that it will pass. If it does, those numbers actually go up because of the way that the tax was done, where you had a maximum and you couldn't tax anything above that. That will now go away, and it will just be a solid one tax for no matter what. That half cent will apply to anything that's purchased, no matter the size. And so, you know, in looking at 347, the plan will stay in place because it's Prop 416, 417. 416 was the plan, 417 is the funding. And with that, we anticipate that it'll be closer to $65 or $70 million now coming out of that instead of 28 or 30. And so it is absolutely critical that we have that. It also puts Pinal County and the city of Maricopa in direct support for Prop 400, as we have been for many, many years in supporting of that. But, you know, as you have a roadway that doesn't understand boundaries or taxation limits, my commuters don't care that it crosses a Pinal Maricopa County line. All they know is they sit in traffic for a really long time and they don't like it. So the reality is this is a really big deal that it should pass, and that it will absolutely help support the Prop 400 reauthorization as it hopefully makes it to the ballot as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then just, do you mind going back to the map really quickly? Since I have a love of Amtrak, will you show us where the two projects connect? I think I saw the rail marked on not that map, but a different.
No, it would go back to.
I guess you can see it there. Yeah.
So it's the vertical coming through. So if you see the 347 and you see where the rail comes from the south east and goes north and to the north west, that intersection right there is where Amtrak's located.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gagel and Mayor Price. Other questions on this?
Mayor Giles, I'd also say, if I may, I really appreciate the support of the MAG and TPC. I also wanted to reach out to the stakeholders here. We have Governor Lewis here today. Thank you, Governor Lewis. This would not be here today if it hadn't been, frankly, for the support of Governor Lewis and for the Gila River Indian community. This is something that is absolutely critical to the future of my city. We're adding 10 to 12,000 people per year. We're an 18-year-old city that's went from 1,200 people to now we're 75,000. We can't keep going down this road without some alleviation of this mess that is creating. And as Governor Lewis and I have spoke many times that this is a real problem for our peoples that are dying at these intersections. That is just a real challenge. So again, with all due respect and thanks to Gila River, to Chen, to MAG, to ADOT, Maricopa County, Pinal County, City of Maricopa, certainly appreciate all of those folks reaching out and for all the help that you've given thus far. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
thank you and good afternoon, everyone. And the community is in full support of this. We appreciate being a very valued stakeholder, and we appreciate our concerns being articulated in the presentation and throughout the study as well. Want to thank the partnership with Mayor and the city of Maricopa as well, Mr. Eric Anderson, MAG as well. I think this is and of course our sister tribe, the Ak-Chin Indian community, Chairman Miguel. I think that this shows really innovative partnerships between regional organizations, cities, and sovereign tribal nations coming together, addressing important infrastructure issues and transportation issues, critical not only to the growth, but also to bringing in safety issues as well. So I think this is a best practice that we can all be proud of that we're discussing today. So I appreciate everyone's partnership moving forward. I know that both Mayor Price and myself and Chairman Miguel, I think a very significant point was when we had the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Buttigieg, came out and saw firsthand on the ground just how important and how critical this project was. This followed along with a lot of support from everyone that I can see around the table as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Governor Lewis. Any other questions or comments on this item? All right, is there a motion to recommend acceptance of the SR 347 Peters and Knoll Road to I-10 Maricopa Corridor Improvement Plan?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Price. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Governor Lewis. We have a motion and a second. I can have a voice vote from those in the room. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Thank you. Andrea, will you please do a roll call vote for the members participating virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I will go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. President Javier.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Schoaf. Mayor Schoaf.
He raised his hand.
Very good. I'll take that as a yes. Vice
Push the wrong button. I pushed the wrong button. Sorry. I'm an aye.
Thank you, Mayor Schoaf. Vice Mayor Smith. Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Walter.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And again, congratulations, Mayor Price. I know you spent countless hours on this project, and as one of your peers, I'm admire that you've really delivered a tremendous achievement for your community. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And Governor, thank you for such a great example of collaborating between Indian communities and cities. This is fun to see.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Chair, if I could have a point of personal
Please,
privilege.
you bet.
I wanted to elaborate on a story that the governor just started telling just very quickly, in the fact that the governor, myself, and Chairman of Chin, Robert Miguel, and myself were standing on 347 and Riggs Road with Secretary Buttigieg. And it just so happened that it was just before the major rush hour, but there happened to be an accident there and it was slowing everything down. And so, of course, it was backing up. And he turns to me and he says, did you plan this? And I said, well, if I had planned this, there'd be a helicopter landing right now and it'd really be backed up onto the 10 and you'd see what it was really going. But I think he got the point. So thank you very much, everybody, for your support.
Great. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is MAG support for the Canadian Snowbirds Act. This is my favorite named act. It's pending in Congress right now. Here to introduce our speaker is Sapna Gupta, the MAG Senior Policy Planner. Welcome, Sapna. And this is an item for approval at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members of the Regional Council. For many years now, MAG, and since the inception of the MAG Economic Development Committee, MAG has researched the impact of Canadian tourism and Canadian investments on the region's economy, as well as the state's economy. And we have worked with you and your staffs over the years to grow cultural and economic ties with Canada and attract more Canadian investment to the region. One of the key people we have worked with over the years is Glenn Williamson, CEO and founder of the Canada-Arizona Business Council. Glenn recently brought the proposed Canadian Snowbirds Act to our attention, and he connected us with Sean Smealy, who's the managing director and founder of AGC Advocacy in Washington, DC, to learn about the proposed legislation and its potential impact on the region and the state's economy. As a result of our discussions, the agenda item, MAG support for the Canadian Snowbirds Act, has been introduced to and gone through the MAG committee process this month, starting with the Economic Development Committee meeting on June 7th. It received a unanimous vote to recommend approval at that meeting, and it was on the consent agenda for both the Management Committee and the Executive Committee. This item is up for action today. And for more background and further information about the Canadian Snowbirds Act, I would like to introduce Sean Smealy, who is working with the Canadian Snowbirds Association, has been working on it for several years, and he is joining us via Zoom from Washington, DC. Sean, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sapna, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Regional Council for this opportunity to present today. And I do want to say a special thanks to Glenn Williamson, who was instrumental in connecting us with MAG and being able to move this forward. As Sapna said, I am a founder and managing partner of ACG Advocacy, and we're a government relations firm here in Washington. And we've been working with the Canadian Snowbird Association, among other organizations, for the past several years, trying to advance this forward. Could you move to the next item, please? The slide. Please go, next slide, please. Next slide, please. I thought it'd be helpful just to kind of quickly go over what the bill actually does do. So as some of you may know, Canadians can come down pretty much just for 6 months out of the year. And then they have to go back, otherwise they have to pay federal taxes, US federal taxes. What this bill will do would extend that another 2 months for certain categories of Canadians. And those are those who are 50 years or older. They maintain a residence in Canada. They either own or rent a property in the US. They meet the general requirements for admission into the US. They do not work for a US employer and do not apply for means tested public assistance. This was to make sure that people are actually snowbirds that come down here, not looking for permanent work down here. This is one of those rare treats in Washington where it's there's no opposition to this bill. Even the Canadian government is favorably inclined for this legislation. It's a win-win, especially for Arizona, because not only will the Canadian snowbirds stay longer and spend more money, but it also helps the border communities in the United States. So there's several states in addition to Arizona, California, and Florida, and a couple others that have a large influx of Canadian snowbirds. Next slide, please. So some of you may know, if you have dealt with Glenn, that there's a significant positive economic impact for Arizona. There's nearly 1 million tourists that visit Arizona each year, in addition to the 100,000 residential tourists that you have. There's estimated $1 billion spent each year. In the Canada-Arizona Business Council estimates that Canada snowbirds add 1.4 to the economy each year. The average stay is 4 months in Arizona, and on average $14,000 per stay, or 1.4 in aggregate. There are several organizations that have officially supported this, including the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association, Experience Scottsdale, and other groups. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So a couple Congresses ago, we actually got members of Congress to introduce in a bipartisan manner the Canadian Snowbird Act. In the current Congress, the 2 Florida senators, along with the 2 Arizona senators, introduced the bill. There's a House companion that actually has more of the border states as members. And the reason that is because what happens is a lot of Canadian snowbirds come down to Florida and Arizona for the full 6 months, and so are somewhat restricted from going cross-border as they normally do in the summertime to places like upstate New York, and et cetera. So, and that's the way that we've been able to get 56 total senators and representatives in a bipartisan manner on these bills over the years. One key aspect to this is that the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, actually included a version of this bill in an immigration bill in a few Congresses ago. And that bill passed the Senate, and Senator Schumer is obviously a key player now, and because of his long border with Canada, is supporting this bill. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as some of you may have followed the reconciliation process here, which is a very arcane thing, that bill was our main target to add this to. This bill actually raises revenue for the federal government because it increased taxes on the extended stay of Canadians. And so we thought that we had a pretty good avenue coming in. Senator Sinema, I've spoken to her a couple of times, actually both times in Arizona about this, and she was very supportive about moving this vehicle. It's a little unclear if this reconciliation bill is actually going to move this year now, but there is a number of tax extender bills that happen at the end of the year, and that's sort of our plan B, backup plan, if you will, to include this bill at the end of the year. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So it would be enormously helpful for Senator Sinema and for Senator Kelly if they heard from the mayors here and by MAG. And if you were officially to support this effort, I think it would go a long way to sort of help encourage the senators and the members of the delegation, the House delegation, to move forward and to make sure that at the end of the year, when all the deal making is done and all the sausage making is done, that this doesn't fall on the floor, that this stays in and is part of any final package that Congress does before they leave this Congress. Next slide, please. Thank you. I know you had a large agenda today, and I really appreciate you carving out time for me. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I know speaking, yes. Do we have a question? All right, hearing none, I'll just comment that Mr. Smealy, as the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, I can tell you that there is a significant economic community from Canadian tourists. I am excited to learn that there is a Canadian for your presentation. For For those participating online, I think we might have someone who needs to getting some feedback. So if you're participating online, please check your computer and see if you're mute. Is there a motion to approve the resolution to support the Canadian Snowbirds Act?
Motion
This
to,
Trip Wilson, I motion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Wilson. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mayor Osborne. We have a motion and a second. Can I have a voice vote from those in the room? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Andrea, will you please do a roll call of those participating virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I will go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. President Javier.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Emercio.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Lavalde.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Schoaf. Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Walter.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is number 8, air quality update. There will be a presentation from MAG Environmental Director Tim Franquist. This item is for information and discussion. Welcome, Tim.
Great. Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council, I'm here to thank you for giving me the opportunity today to give an update. I think it's been a little bit since the last update. Things have changed pretty drastically, so I think we'll have a lot to talk about today. So next slide, please. I like to start the story here. There's not a day that goes by, I don't think, that you don't get a little flash on the computer saying high pollution advisory day or some bad air quality news story. The story is actually a little different over a longer period of time. So what we see here is a graph of national trends, state trends. There is actually a county version of this as well. It looks identical. And what this displays is that over time, as our population increases, our economy increases, all these different increases, our pollution levels in an air quality standpoint have actually decreased. We don't tell that story often enough because what we often hear is the bad news story, because over time, air pollution has actually decreased, but the standards have also decreased. And so that's been a story that I think it's important to tell. That science is important, so that's not to understate the importance of the toxicology that goes with this. So as we learn more about ozone and other pollutants, we also find that we got to change our standards. But I think that story needs to get told as we've had drastic changes in air quality over time, and it's been very positive. Next slide, please. So what we see here is we're certified in MAG to plan for 3 different pollutants: ozone, particulate matter, and carbon monoxide. We broke up particulate matter into 2. Easiest way to describe these is smoke and dust. Particulate matters. We like the particulate matter terminology of the air quality. It sounds fancy, but really that's what we're talking about, dust and smoke. These are the standards up here. As you can see, I did put up the 2008 standard. That has now, we have achieved that standard. That's why I wanted to put that there again, just to start telling a lot more good news stories about this. We have achieved that 2008 standard. We'll talk about this 2015 standard. That is going to be a major challenge. We'll dig into that just a little bit. What we can also see over here is the non-attainment map. So under the Clean Air Act, we don't meet a federal health-based standard. We have to designate a non-attainment area. What we can see here is we have several in the region. We have it for PM10. We have it for ozone. And so we are a major metropolitan area. A lot of people, we do get pollutants. And so while those numbers are coming down, we still do have some challenges with our non-attainment areas here. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So ozone, I think this is one that's in the news a lot and for good reason. So let me start with how ozone is formed. It's formed by volatile organic compounds coming in contact with oxides of nitrogen in the presence of sunlight. And that's the key piece. Ultraviolet radiation is actually what drives the reaction. So if you're in a cloudy environment, you're knocking out some of that UV, you're actually going to see your ozone concentrations decrease. We're in the valley of the sun with 330 days of sunlight. That's plenty of sun to drive this reaction. I put some little icons on there just to kind of flag what some of those chemicals are. And I did that in kind of a hierarchical order. You'll see on VOCs that trees in the valley are our biggest contributor to volatile organic compounds, what's referred to as biogenics. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but these plants do off gas. If that comes in contact with our oxides of nitrogen from vehicles, plain vehicles in the valley, that is the recipe here for ozone. And we can see that large vehicles are the main driver there, vehicles, and then what's referred to as stationary source, what we normally know is a kind of a stacked facility. Next slide, please. All right. Jumping into the data, what we're looking at from 2000 to present, same line, but we'll see kind of this tail at the end. Let me talk about the red line. So under the Clean Air Act, you can exclude data, you've probably heard this before, for wildfires or natural events that actually impact our air quality. So dust events during PM10, wildfires. Sometimes we actually do get dips in the atmosphere that bring ozone down from the upper atmosphere, called stratospheric ozone intrusion. That can actually add to ozone naturally. So that's where we kind of see what we believe in the red line. So that's kind of the good news story. We believe wildfires are drastically impacting the area. Probably not a surprise. We've seen these California wildfires impact us pretty severely visually. You can see that with the smoke. We see our own wildfires doing the same. So this is just a scatter shot. There's actually more wildfire days we believe are there that we could exclude from the air quality data. And that would be this red line. You kind of see that whisker at the end. So we see that delta being pretty significant. The other thing I want to point out, though, is this blue line. This blue line is the air we're breathing. So while from a regulatory standpoint, we can exclude that data, we can develop a plan based on human emissions, but the blue is what we breathe. And I bring that up because we often see this American Lung Association report come out. And boy, when I was the air quality director at DEQ, it was like, how do we spin this? How do we talk about this? And I'll be honest with you, the way I bring at it is let's talk about it and not spin it. This is a challenge. Next slide, please. Let me jump into that because I think this will be a little easier. Here are all the county monitors, or the worst performing monitor in each county in Arizona. And then over to the right, you can see a national trend of ozone. So the national trend is going down as well. The three top lines is Phoenix, and then two urban monitors associated with Pinell and what's called the Tonto monitor, but it's really just north of Phoenix here. And we can see again the trend lines going up. And I think, from an air quality perspective, that's scary. It's a bit alarming. Where the national trend goes down, the county trends are going down, but our area is going up. And we are scratching our heads on this one. We know the wildfires are impacting us. We know international emissions are impacting us. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But that I don't think is the whole story. So we're digging deep into this. We're developing a plan as we speak, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Part of that will be digging deep into what's causing this issue. But I will tell you that this is a bit alarming and a bit of a head scratcher because we're just trending in a lot different way than the nation and the state at large. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we do know is impacting the area is international transport. So we do get transport from East Asia and Mexico. What you can see here is just a quick slide of an animation. So what we could see if we were in an animation mode, this kind of cycles through as you would expect a gas cycle to flow through. What you can see here in kind of that peach color is ozone being transported from East Asia. Under the Clean Air Act, we can exclude that data as well under what's called a but-for demonstration. We would attain a standard but-for emissions emanating from outside the country. The EPA is put a pretty high bar on this. So they've given us two options. One is a retrospective analysis, which says we would have attained the standard but-for emissions outside the country, or we will attain a standard but-for emissions outside the country. The challenge is the EPA has raised that bar is they will not necessarily approve that unless your international emissions exceed your human cost emissions. And that's a bit challenging because that number could be pretty high. So EPA's estimates right now are showing about 2 parts per billion of the standard is international transport. We have some modeling that shows it could be as high as 7. We kind of divide that out, maybe you're seeing somewhere between 4 and 5. So we are significantly impacted by emissions from outside this country. Now, that's temporal. It looks like it's a seasonal issue where April, May, and June may be more influenced by international. By the time we move into summer, it looks like it's fully vehicles that are driving kind of our ozone issues. But this is something that we're going to be exploring, so we do know international emissions do impact the area. But again, the bar is going to be very high on this one. Next slide, please. So what does all this really mean? Well, right now we are currently marginal non-attainment for the 2015 standard. We were just notified through a proposed rulemaking from EPA that we will be bumped up to moderate There is an NGO lawsuit out there. It's going to help drive that timeframe. So long story short, that is going to happen very soon where we will get bumped up to moderate. So that will begin to start to change things a bit. That will require us to do reasonable available control technologies. Under the Clean Air Act, it says you have to do this whether it actually impacts air quality or not. It's very directive. Reasonable available control measures. These are measures that actually would help us attain the standard. So we have 93 measures in place today, so no shorter measures here in Phoenix metropolitan area. So we have a lot of programs already in place. So again, we're really going to be digging deep to try to find what's out there that can actually help us. And that'll become really more important as we talk about offsets. So I'll just mention offsets, emission offsets for a new major source in the area would be required to offset their emissions by different ratios. And I'll tap back to that in just a moment. Contingency measures, when we go here, we actually have to identify measures. If we don't meet the standard, we actually deploy these additional measures. And then the EPA is also requiring us to look outside the non-attainment area if we can't demonstrate attainment here. Again, very big challenge is where do you look to do that? A lot of the sources are already heavily permitted or heavily regulated. And so again, just adds another layer of complexity should we not be able to find controls in the area. My gut feeling is that we can do that, but I just mentioned that as it's a head scratcher if we have to do that, because that could really open the scope of what the plan looks like. Let me tap back to offset emissions for a second. This one can really negatively impact economic growth in the area. So what this means in the today, if you're a very large source, major source, 100 ton per year source, and you come in the area, new source, you have to offset your emissions by 1 to 1.1, which means you have to find 110 tons somewhere else in the area to do that. Right now, when I checked with ADQ yesterday, I have 88 tons in the bank, which means let me be really close to home. So TCM today, one of them we're very proud of, produces 90 tons per year. That's their permit limit. So they're a minor source today. We have a very short window before we would get potential bump up to serious non-attainment. We got 3 years for that. So the plan we put in really has to be effective, really bring our emission levels down, or we hit that trigger. When we hit serious, if we were to hit serious, then the game really changes. So now those major source thresholds are 50 tons per year. TCM is a major source. I talked to Maricopa County yesterday. They said several of the data centers in the area would now be major sources and would likely not locate in the area. This would be a lot easier to go somewhere else where they don't have to deal with non-attainment. So these offsets have been a big issue for many, many years. They reared their head with the Intel project. Intel, I think, can attest to how difficult this process is. Most folks don't have $20 billion to kind of throw into these projects like that. So it can really, really be a challenge. All challenges have an opportunity. So I know many cities are starting to look at electrification of vehicle fleets. I mentioned this to a few folks. Please think about offsets. We did change a statute a few years ago where you can do what's called a non-traditional offset. So if you do some of those fleet replacements, you as a municipality or jurisdiction can actually take those and potentially incentivize.
An organization do with that. I have one here. Background.
I'm sorry, could we, if you're participating virtually, could you please check your computer, make sure you're on mute? We're getting some feedback again. Go ahead.
The other thing I would mention, because we talk so much about new sources, and that's a great thing. We want to see those new sources come in. We want to see the growth. The other thing under the Clean Air Act that gets triggered at this level is major modifications. So what those are modifications to existing sources. So if a facility today wants to grow, we certainly want that. Those are usually good job opportunities, good economic growth. That number becomes much smaller. So in the today, a major modification is 40 tons per year before you trigger these offset requirements. In the tomorrow, that would be 25 tons per year. That would be almost all types of modification. So why I wanted to mention this is we're not there yet in serious, we're in moderate, but we have 3 years to attain this standard. So we'll be likely coming to you with control measures in the future. This is why we'll be doing that. We'll try to articulate to you very clearly is what those emission controls are doing in terms of bringing down emission levels. And if we can articulate what the cost of those emission controls are, so we can start to evaluate the cost of pollution reduction. Next slide, please. I promise the story gets a little bit better from here. Particulate matter. I think this is another really good news story. When I moved to the Valley in 2003, I remember the big face mask up on the building and this brown cloud discussion. And I thought, what the heck did I walk into? I think most stereotypically people think we come to Arizona and the air is much better. And boy, what did we walk into? Fast forward to 2022, and yeah, we have our dust days, but we don't have the brown cloud discussions anymore. I don't think we have nearly the issues that we had with with dust. And that's a huge testament to everything the municipalities have done to stabilize, huge testament to all the businesses, what they've had to do to kind of reduce emission levels. So we do get our exceedances a lot of times on windy days. We can certainly see those. We do get to exclude those from the data like we discussed. And so I think we're on the upswing here in terms of PM10 and the Maricopa County area. Next slide, please. But that also then brings up PM10 in Pinal County. Regional Council had just approved the PM10 serious issue. I think this highlights kind of a dual issue here with both water availability and dust control. This is something I think we're going to see around the valley, and I think we're going to see around the area. As we see drought levels drop and people have to take different drought control measures, water is what you use to do dust suppression. And so here is going to be this increasing challenge of water availability and dust generation. And so Pinal has some challenges in the southern part, usually around kind of this, we can see Hidden Valley. I think this is a great monitor to measure the health of cows. I don't think there's a lot of folks down there. So this has been a problematic monitor for many, many years for that reason, but it is a regulatory monitor. And so we're working very hard to get that monitor under control. And real kudos to Pinal County for all the stabilization, road stabilization that they're planning to do in the future. Next slide, please. Great. Next slide, please. Particulate matter 2.5 smoke. This is always a fun one to talk about with your colleagues up north because like, well, smoke's not an issue in the valley, right? And you have to tell them, well, it is during the holidays. And it's recreational. This is not like Alaska or Washington where wood fire is actually a heat source, maybe in some folks' house, but here it's mainly recreational burning and fireworks. What I want to highlight here is in the today, we attain the annual standard. The EPA is now proposing to change the standard, and they typically give us a range. What you can see is the two red lines represent the range of 8 to 10 micrograms per cubic meter. We would be fine at the 10. What you can see is at 8, if the EPA picks 8, we would actually be non-attainment for the annual PM 2.5 standard. Again, that triggers all the non-attainment stuff we just discussed with offsets, different control programs under that program. Next slide, please. Kind of a same scenario. They're looking at the daily standard as well. Currently, we're at 35. We're fine, but trending a little bit in the wrong direction. As we can see here, there's a slight uptick. If this standard gets changed to 30, again, we're relatively fine. If it gets changed to 25, again, we would be looking at a non-attainment situation there. My gut feeling is what we see in the past is these ranges come out. EP seems to tend to take the higher end or the higher majority end. So I don't think we'll see 25 or 8. We could see something in the middle or higher, but again, it just highlights that these standards do change relatively frequently. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, we'll end on the real good news story, which is carbon monoxide. So one of the ones you don't hear too much about, and I think it's just a great testament to the work MAG's done over all these years. Every standard that comes out, you'll hear the same thing from most air quality professionals. It's impossible to meet. I don't know how we're going to get there. The same was said about the carbon monoxide standard back when it was put in place. And what you can see is that we're still getting benefits, flatlining a little bit now just because vehicle emissions are doing so well, but we're still actually making some real great improvements here. So these challenges are challenges, but if we work hard like we have been doing in the past, we get these control projects in place, we can actually meet this challenge. Next slide, please. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tim. Questions from the board? Mayor Gallego.
Could you, I understand it's triggered by a lawsuit and you can't give a date certain, but could you give us a little bit more information about the timeline for the moderate non-attainment designation?
Mr. Chair, Mayor Gallego, I don't know exactly. I would say within a couple months. We are treating this like it's live now because we do have a proposed rule. They have proposed a deadline of January 1st, 2023 to have the plan in. It's such a short period. I don't think we can wait to get that quote hard deadline, but I suspect between a 60-day notice of intent to sue, by the time they sit down at the table, you're probably looking at 2 or 3 months before the lawsuit. EPA will likely finalize that before the lawsuit even hits the table.
So we're working on our communication strategy now.
We have been.
Thank you.
I might be the only one who's needs to ask this question, but I know this is good news, and it's been a long time since we've had any quote unquote good news on environmental issues. So this is exciting, but the new designation of moderate non-attainment in ozone, is that an improvement from where we were, or is that a downgrading from where we were?
Oh, Mr. Chair, great question. It's actually worse. To go up in classifications means you're degrading in air quality. So Marginal is better, moderate, worse, serious, even worse.
So what were we before we were moderate?
Mr. Chair, we were marginal. We are marginal today.
So moderate's worse than marginal.
Correct.
Okay. As a region. Right. Yes, we don't embrace the marginal label at all. Eric.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council, yeah, and once you go moderate, then you go serious. And is there anything after serious? I don't know. But the ultimate hammer the federal government has on if we can't meet these standards is loss of federal highway funds for the state. So, we're talking about $1 billion or so on the table. So once again, but I think the very important message here that I think you need to remember is the impact on economic development. And Tim mentioned the emission banks. And so you can buy and sell emission credits. Some states are very sophisticated in that. We haven't been at that point, but that's where we're headed. I think that we're going to have to get more sophisticated in terms of how we buy and sell these kinds of credits to continue our economic development efforts. So it's a serious issue. And once again, we have a great team working on it. But every time you think you're just about there, EPA comes in and the standards changed. And so, trying to lower those ambient air quality standards all the time presents more challenges for regions like the MAG region. As Tim mentioned, we have 93 control measures in place today, and we'll have to look for more.
All right, thank you. So my enthusiasm about the good news is tempered now that I understand we're actually trending in a less than desirable direction.
But your electric vehicle push is visionary.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Makes it all the more urgent to talk about things like electric vehicles. Any additional questions for Tim? Thank you very much. Again, this was on our agenda just for information and discussion, but it's important. Our next agenda item is number 10, the legislative update from MAG Policy and Government Relations Director Nathan Pryor. I know Nathan's joining us virtually. This item is on our agenda for information and discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. We continue to focus on enabling legislation, of course, for continuation of house and sales tax for transportation in Maricopa County. I'd like to first start off by thanking our member agencies for your support. We recognize the fatigue with the lengthy session, but as we near the end of session, your continued outreach to your legislators is critical to our success. So with that, a little bit more background information by way of reminder, Senate Bill 1356 has been our bill vehicle for the continuation. Of course, this passed in the Senate back in some months ago now, March, with an emergency clause intact. Since then, it's been waiting in the House, needing 40 votes by House members to retain that emergency clause provision. Just by way of reminder, why do we need that emergency clause? That's the threshold needed for a quick inaction of the legislation into statute to call a November 2022 ballot. So our bill effectively remains on hold pending budget negotiations and discussions. But as we mentioned last month at the Regional Council meeting, we are up against a June 25th due date with the county to get on a ballot for November 22. So in these closing days here, in this time frame up till June 25th, the due date, we would need to see the legislature pass 1356 and the governor sign. So with the June 25th deadline approaching, we're staying the course, of course, on Senate Bill 1356, but also reviewing alternatives. We have, for some time now, a bill vehicle ready, House Bill 2685. That's a vehicle opportunity for a strike everything amendment. No action has been taken yet to introduce an amendment, but we could move forward when the time is right. This option would not require an emergency clause. So this really provides us with potential flexibility. So assuming we can't make the June 25th deadline, we want to leave this session with some amount of certainty. So by looking at our bill vehicle 2685, potential amendment to that, that gives us flexibility beyond the November 2022 ballot. This was discussed at the MAG Executive Committee on Monday, June 13th. These alternatives were reviewed in executive session. So we continue to explore all alternatives. Again, 1356 time is running out on that. We're looking at our alternative for flexibility beyond November 2022. But with that being said, now is the time, again, to reach out to your legislators. We expect things to move quickly, and the time to emphasize the needed support for Senate Bill 1356 and or House Bill 2685 is now. We don't want to get lost in the shuffle of budget approval, sine die. Those actions typically happen very quickly. So we're looking to conclude this legislative session with certainty in terms of knowing when we are going to the ballot. I'd like to thank our business community stakeholders for their continuing and ongoing involvement. But of course, thank you again to our member agencies. We appreciate your involvement and level of effort working with your legislators. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Are there questions for Nathan? All right. Thank you very much for that update. Next on our agenda is MAG Executive Director Eric Anderson will provide information regarding the appointment to the Transportation Policy Committee. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. One of the responsibilities of the Regional Council is to appoint the members of the Transportation Policy Committee and also appoint the chair and vice chair. The practice typically is the vice chair would ascend to the chair position. Supervisor Sellers is currently the vice chair. So following our practice and upon the action today, he would become chair. A memo was issued in May soliciting interest in the vice chair position. We received one letter in response to that. That was Mayor Osborne from City of Buckeye to serve as vice chair. So the request today, Mr. Chair, is for the motion to appoint the members and officers of the Transportation Policy Committee to include Supervisor Jack Sellers as the chair, Mayor Osborne as vice chair, and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Eric on this agenda item? Is there a motion to approve the appointment of members and officers for the Transportation Policy Committee?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mayor Dickey. We have a motion and a second. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room? In favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Andrea, will you please do a roll call vote of the members participating virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I will go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. President Javier.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Walter.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson. Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Andrea. Item 12 on our agenda is
Mr.
election.
Chair, this is Mayor Barney. I got in late. I vote aye on that. Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Mayor Barney.
Thank you, Gail. Next agenda item is election of regional council officers and executive committee members. On May 25th of this year, the MAG nominating committee met and recommended a slate of officers for 2022 through 2023. The MAG officer positions are chair, vice chair, and treasurer. In accordance with the MAG nomination process, 3 at-large members are also nominated to serve on the executive committee. In accordance with the MAG nomination process, the past chair of the regional council also serves on the executive. The recommended positions are as follows: Chair, Mayor Kenneth Weiss, City of Avondale; Vice Chair, Mayor Kate Gallego, City of Phoenix; Treasurer, Mayor Les Peterson, Town of Carefree. 3 at-large members are Mayor Kevin Hartke from the City of Chandler, Mayor Alexis Hermosillo from the City of El Mirage, and Mayor Eric Osborne from the City of Buckeye. And I would continue as the past chair. Any questions regarding that process or those nominations? Is there a motion to elect the proposed slate of regional council officers and executive committee members?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Governor Lewis, and seconded by Mayor Dickey. We have a motion and a second. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Andrea, will you please do a roll call vote of those participating virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I will go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Barney, I'll come back. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. President Javier.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo. Mayor Lavalde.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Aye.
Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Walter.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson. And Mayor Barney.
Aye, I'm having trouble with my buttons apparently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Barney. Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is item 13, the passing of the gavel. So give me a minute or two here to pontificate, if you don't mind. When I began this role as chair last June, it was the first in-person meeting of the regional council since the pandemic began. Since that time, we have come back and we've come back, I believe, stronger. It's been a busy and historic year for MAG. We continued to create pathways for continued growth and prosperity in our region through many, many important projects. I'm going to highlight just a few. Next slide, please. Thank you. A major achievement this year was the delivery of the new regional transportation plan known as Momentum 2050. I'm proud to note that the plan received unanimous support by our Transportation Policy Committee and this regional council. The Momentum Plan is vital to continuing progress on our multimodal transportation system and to generating economic development. Next slide, please. We are the fastest growing county in the nation, as we're all very aware of. The important transportation investments in the plan can be made possible through a 25-year extension of the half-cent sales tax known today, as we know, as Proposition 400, which, as we also know, is set to expire in December of 2025. Continuing this dedicated transportation funding source ensures that the high quality of life we enjoy today can be sustained for the more than 6 million residents who are expected to live in the valley by the year 2050. Next slide, please. Another major transportation accomplishment in 2022 was the establishment of the MAG Emerging Technologies Program. The program allows us to pilot and test various technologies within real-world conditions and determine their viability on a large scale. This cutting-edge approach saves money and results in a better, safer transportation system. Next slide, please. We also saw an historic embodiment of regionalism when, for the first time, local and tribal governments approved a plan to respond to our growing homelessness crisis. Pathways Home is a rallying cry that empowers MAG members to take the next steps together. In a short time period, we have made considerable progress. There is much more work to be done, and we all have a role to play in responding to homelessness. Thank you for your support on that. Next slide, please. MAG's regional analytics team continued to provide important resources to help guide our work. A prime example was the launch of the Housing Data Explorer, in which the team analyzed sales and rent data to track trends, providing decision makers with important information regarding housing affordability in their communities. These resources aren't limited to policymakers. MAG's interactive maps and exclusive databases can be used by anyone on any online device, providing a valuable resource to residents and businesses as well. Next slide, please. MAG also continued its important work in preserving and advancing a clean environment. We sometimes lose sight of the fact that our air quality has improved significantly over the past 5 decades, thanks to the work of MAG as well as efforts by our residents and businesses. We've made progress in reducing harmful levels of carbon monoxide, ozone and dust, and the MAG environmental team developed a better understanding of having the sources and transport of air pollution. Having the air quality and transportation experts housed together at MAG ensures that we grow clean even as we build additional infrastructure. These accomplishments are the tip of the iceberg. I commend MAG staff for the many ways they support us. This support allows us to work together to drive regional change. I will continue to stay actively engaged on the Regional Council, and I look forward to seeing and supporting the many great achievements ahead. While Mayor Weiss is traveling today and could not be with us personally, it's my honor to pass the gavel to him virtually and to play a video of his recorded remarks. There you go.
John, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. I'm excited to lead this organization over the next year, but I wanted to take a few moments and thank you for your dedicated service to MAG. You really brought us through some difficult times. Following up on the pandemic, following up on all the things that the Valley has seen over the last year, your dedicated leadership has really stabilized this organization. It's also brought people from all across the Valley, mayors, tribal organizations, and county organizations working together for some key initiatives. Before we get any further, I just want to present you with a token of our appreciation. For those of you on the call, it's a lucite plaque in the shape of Arizona and says, "In appreciation for your dedicated service as chair of the Maricopa Association of Governments." My hope is that when you look at that plaque, you understand the impact that you've had on the region and on this organization. You talked about coming back stronger after the pandemic, and part of that key is being flexible. And this organization has shown flexibility and resiliency. Part of that also is that we've worked together, coming from all different parts of the Valley, to bring together some key initiatives. Obviously, the main one is momentum, and that's our regional transportation plan. I'm excited about bringing that over the finish line. We have to get it through the legislature and to the voters. And I have a real confidence that the voters will look at that plan and understand how important it is, and that we will be celebrating it in November of 2022. Billions of dollars have been invested in the Valley due to the regional transportation plan. Just this year, over $1.6 billion has been invested in economic development due to the regional transportation plan. Those numbers will only increase as the population of the Valley increases. And as we do projects like SR 30, as we work on the spine, as we work on I-17, and as we work on projects throughout the entire Valley. Another area of focus has been our human services, and that is focused on homelessness. Just recently, MAG approved a plan to address those issues. And I think what it really does, I think it helps focus the mayors, the councils, the cities on a plan that I think will be incredibly successful to reduce homelessness. I look forward to working with that over the next year and seeing how that plan kind of develops. One thing we've talked about too is technology. The focus has been on battery technology and EV charging, but the truth is there's so many more technologies that are happening. We're looking at a fundamental change in transportation that we haven't seen for 100 years. How does MAG position itself to be the leader in that technology and developing those technologies over the last year? And I will tell you that I think we have dedicated people not only on the elected official side, but on the MAG staff. I think we can really be a leader in that, not only for the Valley, but for the state and for the nation. I look forward to working with you guys on those projects. Finally, I want to reiterate that the success that we've had as an organization over the last year and over the last few years has been the ability for all of us to work together. Even though we had differing opinions on what priorities should be done, we came together for what's best for the organization. John, again, that goes to your leadership and your dedication and your calming demeanor. While our demeanors might be a little bit different going forward, my hope is to replicate that calmness as we go forward and as we celebrate the successes that we'll inevitably have over the last year. Thank you for your service. Thank you for allowing me to do this virtually. And I look forward to seeing you all in July.
Well, thank you, Mayor Weiss, and I will calmly but enthusiastically express my support for Mayor Weiss, and we look forward to the leadership that he's going to provide this organization. Next item on our agenda is requests for future agenda items. Are there any requests from the members of our body for future agenda items? All right, next item then is comments from the committee. Are there any additional comments from members of the Regional Council? Mayor Gallego.
Want to join in Mayor Weiss in congratulating you for an extraordinary term. You have led on projects that will help this county and region for generations. There are going to be kids who can get to school safely, people who can get to work more efficiently, more time with their family, and that is very exciting. We also appreciate the move forward on the fight against homelessness and bringing us together as a region, as that challenge does not know municipal boundaries. You've also taken on leadership and partnership with MAG as an employer of excellence, which has been complex during the pandemic, and we've made important steps in that area. So thank you. Thank you for representing us down at the legislature and in so many other forums where we need a good regional spokesperson. We wanted to recognize your leadership.
Well, thank you, Kate. And I hope that all of us take pride in adding homelessness to our agenda. I think that's obviously the right thing for us to do. And that's not my achievement. That's our achievement. So thank you very much for doing that.
And I would like to echo both the comments of Mayor Weiss and Mayor Gallego, and thank you. I think your leadership has been outstanding. And my definition of leadership is you take, in this instance, a very strong organization, and when you step down from the leadership, it is better than when you came. And I believe it is. So thank you for all that you have done. And I wish you my personal best.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. We're going to cut those comments short now at this point, because I want to double down on another obvious thing that needs to be said here today. Well, not that saying nice things about me is obvious, I'm sorry. But I want to recognize and thank Mayor Christian Price for his service to the MAG region and to the Regional Council over the past decade. Mayor Price has consistently been a strong advocate for transportation over the years. The completion of the overpass and future improvements on State Route 347, that I was so glad that we could see that happen and get that across the finish line here. But before you left, Mayor Price, that's really a testament to your vision and the need for expanding our ever-growing region. So congratulations again. We want to wish you well as you move on to the Maricopa Economic Development Alliance as the president and CEO. And again, thank you so much for your great example and the leadership that you provide in our region. You're going to be greatly missed. The Regional Council will, that concludes the items on our agenda. The Regional Council meeting in July will not take place, and our next meeting will be Wednesday, August the 24th. And with no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Congratulations, sir. Thank you.